it is likely that there will be some sort of Israeli ground operation in Gaza. Netanyahu his rhetoric on this has been pretty tough. He's talked about destroying Hamas, destroying their command and control centers, destroying all their weaponry and their ammunition. And it's quite difficult for him to back down from that. So
President Joe Biden has made that trip to Israel to meet Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He has now left the country, or we're fairly certain he's on his way to leaving. He backed Israel's stance on that deadly hospital bombing in Gaza, saying it appears to have been caused by Palestinian militants. He did say he was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion. Let's talk to Kim Darroch, former UK ambassador to the States and a former national security advisor here as well. Kim Darroch, what do you think of this visit by Joe Biden? I know it's hard to gauge right now what may have been achieved. What's your best guess?
Best guess is this, that he will have certainly achieved part of his objective, which was to demonstrate solidarity with Israel. The United States, long been Israel's closest ally. It's what the American public and the US Congress would have expected of him, and I think he's certainly would have delivered that. The other part of what I believe his objectives would have been is harder to judge. I think he will have been trying to persuade the Israeli government, Netanyahu, to set up some sort of proper humanitarian operation in the south of Gaza to let food and water and shelter and supplies in, to let the international aid organizations in, because there is upwards of 750,000 refugees from Gaza City down there, and there's nothing for them. And I suspect that he will have wanted to see something happen there. And I think we'll see in the next few hours whether he's made any progress on that. I mean, he will want the Rafah crossing open. As I say, the international aid agencies working away down there. We'll see if that happens.
Right. I think earlier in the week, people might have expected the land invasion of Gaza to start relatively soon. In fact, as soon as Joe Biden was safely out of Israeli airspace, then that would start to happen. Do you think that is now likely?
I think it is likely that there will be some sort of Israeli ground operation in Gaza. Netanyahu his rhetoric on this has been pretty tough. He's talked about destroying Hamas, destroying their command and control centers, destroying all their weaponry and their ammunition. And it's quite difficult for him to back down from that. So I think something will happen. He is being urged from all sides to keep civilian casualties to a minimum. And we will see how he responds to that and how the Israelis conduct the operation, because that's really important. The other factor that may be delaying them, that I'm guessing here, is what's the political strategy for the aftermath? If you destroy Hamas's authority in Gaza, what happens then? Who's in charge? And I can't believe, given all the risks and the dangers of it, that Israel wants to take direct control of Gaza. So I'm a little baffled to know what their political strategy is, what their plan is there. And that may be delaying them as well.
Yes. I mean, I suppose there are a multitude of questions, including who will rebuild and who will pay for it.
Yeah, there was a limited operation by the Israelis in Gaza in 2014. And every time rockets come out of Gaza, which happens, as you know, quite frequently, the Israelis respond. So Gaza is almost always being rebuilt from bomb damage, but nothing to the extent that we have seen in the last few days. So it'll be a huge operation. Gaza itself doesn't have any money, so the international community, if it's going to happen, will have to take a lead on this. And we've done it in the past, but it's a much bigger job than it has ever been before.
Can you tell us your thoughts about Qatar's role in all of this? It was mentioned by the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. They seem to have an ability to be attempting to coordinate hostage release because they have a better relationship with Hamas than other people might do in the region. Can we pin any realistic hopes on that, do you think?
I'm really not sure about this, and there isn't enough information to form a clearer view. You're right, Hamas hosts the sort of civilian wing of Hamas Qatar hosts the wing of Hamas in their country, and therefore could be well placed to have a role in all this, except that their relations with Israel are not close. They won't win a lot of approval in Israel for hosting Hamas. And whether the Israelis would agree to conduct mediation or negotiations through Qatar is, for me, quite an open, big question. I have my doubts. But ultimately, I doubt that it's going to be one country that will become the sort of broker on this. I think the Americans will certainly be talking to all the Arab countries with which they have friendly relations. The Israelis have normalized with some Arab countries, so they have some avenues as well. I think there'll be quite a lot of different messages going backwards and forwards, and I just hope that somewhere, somehow, a mechanism is found to bring about some hostage release. But let's underestimate the difficulties of this.
And what does that phrase normalised relations actually mean?
It means that, the first one to do it was Sadat, Egypt, back decades ago. Most recently, it was the Abraham Accords, UAE and Bahrain and Morocco normalised. It means you exchange ambassadors, you re-establish normal diplomatic relations, and you have a lot more scope to have a dialogue and to try to work on problems together. I'm not saying that has happened since the Abraham Accords, but it's easier to do when you have normalised relations.
And can we just ask very briefly about the optics of Joe Biden, particularly when he first arrived in Tel Aviv earlier this morning, our time? He is 80. He had just got off a flight, but he didn't seem to be entirely on top of things. Naturally, he's exhausted. There are very, very high stakes here. But using phrases like the other team, it doesn't help, does it?
Look, it's not a phrase any official would have advised him to use. If you look at Joe Biden's career, there's a long history of phrases that some would describe as folksy, others would describe as basically a bit gaffe-prone. I don't think it will strike people necessarily back in America as that strange or that inappropriate, but more internationally, maybe it does look like that. All that said, I think some of the stuff that I've been watching on TV today of, for example, his meetings with the families of some of the victims, is handled with genuine empathy. So as usual with Joe Biden, you get some stuff that looks very appropriate and looks very well handled. And certainly he's a very empathetic individual. And you get the odd phrase that just strikes a strange, odd note.
Thank you very much. That is Kim Darroch, Lord Darroch, former UK ambassador to the US, and also a former UK national security advisor.